The sterile hum of the Starweaver's medical bay filled the air, a low buzz that made the walls feel alive. Above the operating table, a gleaming auto-scalpel floated in a shimmering containment field, its blade winking under the harsh lights, like it was auditioning for a sci-fi horror flick. Instructor Zykari, a towering Quillian with 4 arms and a face like a perpetually disappointed librarian, loomed over a holodisplay that projected a 3D model of a human arm. The display pulsed, red, screaming class for trauma, subdermal hematoma, possible tendon rupture, immediate surgical intervention required. Zykari's 3 amber eyes blinked in perfect sync, a Quillian quirk that always made humans feel like they were being scanned by a judgmental photocopier. Students, Zykari intoned, their voice a mix of gravel and reverence. This is a historic moment. After 47 galactic cycles of training, you are ready to perform your first live procedure on a real patient. From the operating table came a groan, followed by a distinctly human voice, muffled by a rebreather mask that someone had forgotten to activate. Guys, I'm fine. Really? It's just a scratch. Zykari's torso swiveled 180 degrees, their lower arms gesturing sharply toward the observation dome where a dozen alien students watched with glowing eyes. Do not interrupt the triage protocol, Zykari snapped. You are stable, but we must proceed according to standard Quillian medical doctrine. The patient, one Riley Carter, a 34-year-old paramedic from Seattle, sighed heavily. He was strapped to the table, his shirt sliced open to reveal a wiry frame and a shallow cut on his left forearm. Riley had joined the Terran Zykari Medical Exchange program aboard the Starweaver to teach basic human first aid, not to play guinea pig for a class of overeager Alien Med students. I'm telling you, it's just a cut. I don't need you to carve me up like a Thanksgiving turkey. Silence. Riley Carter. Zykari's upper arms waved dismissively as they turned back to the holodisplay. You are interfering with a life-saving intervention. Riley rolled his eyes at the ceiling, which was studded with sensors that looked like they were judging him. He'd been through worse car accidents, bar fights. That one time he tried to taste the rainbow with expired yogurt. This was a Tuesday. The injury had happened during a training demo gone wrong. He'd been showing the students how to immobilize a sprained ankle when a nervous Zykari student, Plix, had tripped over a hover cart and sent Riley crashing into a storage rack. A jagged edge had nicked his forearm, maybe 3 inches long, barely deep enough to need a band-aid. He'd slapped some gauze on it, asked for a coffee, and figured he'd be back to teaching in 10 minutes. Instead, he was now the main attraction in Alien Med School, Surgery Edition. Look, Zykari, Riley said, straining against the straps. Just let me sit up and I'll fix this myself. It's not rocket science. Or, you know, quantum surgery. Student with shimmering violet scales, Tavera stepped forward, her 6-fingered hands trembling. Instructor, the subject exhibits signs of delirium. He resists critical intervention. Should we administer a neural suppressant? Zykari's eyes narrowed. You will not touch the patient without sterile gloves. Sedation is only authorized. For confirmed neurospasms, proceed with the diagnostic probe. Riley yelped as a cold, sticky sensor patch yanked out a patch of arm hair. Okay, that's it. I'm not letting you amateurs turn my arm into a science fair project. He ripped off the sensor, ignoring the collective gasp from the students, and swung his legs off the table. The straps gave way with a satisfying snap. Apparently, Zykari restraints weren't designed for humans who'd spent their teens sneaking out of grounded bedrooms. Subject is mobile. Plix shouted, their antennae quivering like overcaffeinated tuning forks. Is this physically possible under trauma, stress? Riley, remain prone. Zykari's voice cracked with distress. You risk further tissue Riley ignored them, striding to the wall where his battered backpack hung on a hook. Someone grab that for me, please. Unless you want to keep arguing about intubating my elbow. A tiny student, Quev, barely taller than Riley's knee, scurried over and dragged the backpack to him with surprising strength. Riley unzipped it, pulled out a compact first aid kit, and marched to the sterilization sink. Watch and learn, folks, he said, his tone a mix of exasperation and showmanship. This is how you handle a minor cut without turning it into an intergalactic incident. He washed his hands with antiseptic foam, dried them on a sterile towel, and peeled back the gauze on his arm. The cut was clean, barely oozing, and definitely not worth the drama. He irrigated it with saline, pinched the edges together, and started stitching with the calm precision of someone who'd closed wounds in the back of ambulances during rush hour. The students crowded closer, their glowing eyes wide enough to light up a runway. You're sewing your own flesh, Tavara whispered, her scales paling to a faint lavender. Yup, Riley said, wincing slightly as he pulled the suture, thread tight. It's called suturing. Not magic, not surgery, just basic first aid. You don't need to crack open my arm to fix a paper cut. Quev, clutching a data pad, tilted their head. But the blood loss, doesn't it compromise your cardiovascular stability? Riley snorted. This may be a tablespoon of blood. Tops. I've spilled more ketchup on my shirt at a barbecue. Zykari stepped forward, their arms crossed in a quadruple knot of skepticism. You, a non-surgeon, claim to perform this procedure. Without guidance, I'm a paramedic, Riley said, tying off the last stitch. I've stitched up drunks, dog bites, and one very unlucky guy who tried to juggle knives at a Renaissance fair. This doesn't even crack my top 100. He snipped the thread, slapped on a bandage, and flexed his arm. See? No internal bleeding, no tendon damage, just a little sting. Done. The room fell silent, the kind of silence that follows a plot twist no one saw coming. The holodisplay chimed, updating with a scan of Riley's arm. No deep tissue damage, no vascular compromise, minor superficial laceration. Zykari stared at it, their eyes blinking out of sync for the first time Riley had ever seen. Your assessment aligns with the scan, Zykari said, sounding like they'd just been told gravity was optional. How did you know? Because I've been a human for 34 years, Riley said, packing up his kit. I know what a bad injury feels like. You guys are brilliant, but you're overcomplicating this. Sometimes a cut is just a cut. Plix raised a tentative claw, but our protocols classify any blood loss as a potential class for trauma requiring surgical exploration. Riley grinned, leaning against the table. That's because your species freaks out if you lose a drop of fluid. Humans, we bleed, we bruise, we bounce back. Context matters. You've got to learn the difference between a Zykari emergency and a human. Kyle, walk it off. The students murmured, glancing between Riley and the scan. Zykari exhaled, a sound like a deflating balloon. You propose we revise our triage algorithms to account for species-specific resilience, and maybe teach some basic field skills, Riley added, like how to stitch a wound without turning it into a full-blown autopsy. Zykari nodded slowly, their arms Very well, Riley Carter. You will lead tomorrow's trauma training session. You will not perform procedures on yourself again. Dio, Riley said, smirking. But I'm holding you to that no scalpels thing. As the students filed out, whispering excitedly and scribbling notes, Tavara lingered by the door. Riley, she said, her voice soft. You made it look like sorcery. Nah, he chuckled, slinging his backpack over his shoulder. Just practice, and a stubborn refusal to panic. You'll get there. As the door hissed shut, Riley sank onto the table, his arm throbbing slightly. These aliens, he muttered, are gonna give me an ulcer before I get back to Earth. The med bay had been transformed overnight. Gone were the floating scalpels and surgical drapes, replaced by a cluttered table of Terran first aid supplies, most of which had been borrowed from Riley's personal stash. The observation dome was dimmed to a less intimidating glow, and someone had added a synthetic fern in the corner, probably because they'd read somewhere that plants calm humans down. Riley wasn't sure if it was supposed to be therapeutic or just decorative, but it looked like it was plotting something. He arrived after breakfast, nursing a bulb of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed with decaf sadness. His lab coat, designed for Zykari's elongated torsos, hung off him like a poorly tailored toga, but he wore it anyway for the vibes. The room was packed with students, their glowing eyes fixed on him like he was about to reveal the secrets of the universe, or, at least, how to not accidentally dissect someone. Morning, everyone, Riley said, rolling up his sleeves. Today, we're diving into wound assessment. Specifically, how to tell when something needs a hospital and when it just needs a band-aid and a nap. Zykari stood in the corner, arms folded, their expression unreadable. Riley suspected they were still processing yesterday's debacle. That, or they were mentally drafting a report titled Human Defies Medical Logic, Universe in Chaos. He gestured to the table. Let's start with what we've got here. Someone tell me what this is. Quev pointed to a small box with trembling enthusiasm. That is a Terran tissue extraction tool for nutritional recycling. Riley blinked. You mean dental floss? This is for cleaning teeth, not harvesting snacks. Next, Tavara tapped a packet of gauze. This is for internal fluid containment. Yes? Nope, Riley said, holding up the pad. This is for soaking up surface blood. You press it, on a cut, not shove it inside someone. Let's not start any new medical trends. The students scribbled furiously, one of them muttering about Terran hygiene rituals. Riley moved on, picking up a bottle of saline. This is sterile salt water. You use it to rinse wounds, keep bacteria out. No lasers, no nanobots, just good old water. Plix's antennae twitched. Water? For microbial defense. Yup, Riley said, pouring a stream over a synthetic practice arm. You rinse, you pat dry, you move on. No need for a full decontamination chamber for a scraped knee. The room went quiet, the students staring like Riley had just suggested they treat a heart attack with a hug. He continued, showing them how to use adhesive strips for shallow cuts and compression wraps for sprains. He kept it simple, using analogies like think of the body like a spaceship that can fix its own dents to bridge the gap between human resilience and Zykari paranoia. 2 hours in, Riley decided to up the ante. Time for a practical, he said, clapping his hands. I'm giving you each a scenario. No fancy tech, just your hands and your brain. Think like you're stuck on a desert planet with nothing but a first aid kit and a bad attitude. He tapped a wall panel, and a holoprojection flickered to life. A simulated human leg with swelling and bruising. Case 1. Minor fall. Some discoloration, no obvious fracture. What's the plan? Plick stepped forward, their voice confident. We isolate the limb, scan for internal fluid, and prepare a vascular reconstruction. Riley raised an eyebrow. For a bruise? Why not just poke it and see if it screams? Plick faltered. But the discoloration? It could indicate systemic failure. It's a bruise, Riley said, pinching the bridge of his nose. Blood vessels break, blood pools. It looks dramatic. Ice it, elevate it, maybe take a day off. No need to rebuild the whole leg. Quev raised a hand. How do you distinguish between bruising and necrosis? You watch, Riley said. If it fades in a few days, it's fine. If it spreads or smells like death, then you worry. Medicine isn't always about doing something. Sometimes you just let the body handle it. Zykari made a clicking sound. Their version of a skeptical grunt, non-intervention as a treatment? This contradicts Zykari medical doctrine. Yeah, well, Riley said, grinning. Your doctrine thinks a hangnail is a death sentence. Humans are built to take a beating. Let me show you. He rolled up his other sleeve, pointing to a faint scar on his wrist. Fell off a bike when I was 12. Broke it. No surgery. Just a cast and some time. Healed fine. Tavara's scales shimmered with horror. You allow broken bones to mend without reconstruction. Most of the time, yeah, Riley said. Bones are like Legos. They snap back together, if you give them a chance. The students leaned in, some scribbling, others recording with their ocular implants. Riley kept going, showing them how to check for infection, when to use pressure, and how to avoid turning a minor injury into a galactic crisis. By the end, they were handling the tools with less fear, even practicing basic sutures on synthetic skin. As the session wrapped up, Zykari approached. You have disrupted their understanding of medical protocol, they said, their tone caught between admiration and annoyance. Good, Riley said, packing up. They're thinking for themselves now, that's the whole point. Zykari's eyes blinked out of sync again. You will continue this training, but no more self-surgery. Riley saluted mockingly. Scout's honor. Unless someone tries to intubate my foot, by the next training cycle, the medbay had been reconfigured again, this time with padded mats and a table piled high with Terran supplies. The fern was still there, looking slightly more suspicious, like it was eavesdropping. The students filed in, their postures less rigid, their eyes glinting with something new, curiosity. Riley stood at the front, his coffee bulb empty, but his energy high. Today, we're tackling joint injuries. No blood, no scalpels, just mechanical fixes. You're gonna learn how to stabilize a dislocation or sprain with nothing but your hands and some common sense? Tavara raised a hand. No pain suppressors, nope, Riley said. Pain's part of the deal. It tells you what's wrong. You don't ignore it, but you don't let it run the show either. He dragged a training dummy onto the mat. Its plastic skin, an unsettling shade of beige. This guy's got a dislocated shoulder. Anterior displacement. Your job is to confirm it's not fractured, reduce it, and stabilize it. Watch closely. He knelt beside the dummy, palpating the shoulder with exaggerated care. Feel for crunching, that's bad. If it's smooth, you rotate the arm gently, like you're asking it to dance, not forcing it into a wrestling match. He guided the dummy's arm through the motions, and a soft click signaled the joint popping back into place. The students gasped. Quev whispered, no sedation? Nope, Riley said. Hurts like hell, but it's doable. Humans are weird like that. One by one, the students took turns. Their movements clumsy at first but improving with each try. Plick's nearly dislocated, the dummy's other shoulder in their enthusiasm, earning a laugh from Riley. Easy champ. It's not a tug-of-war. By the final scenario, a simulated wrist fracture requiring a splint, the students were improvising. Tavara used a rolled bandage to pad the wrist, while Quev cut a foam strip to reinforce the splint. Riley watched, a grin spreading across his face. They were getting it. As the session ended, Zykari approached, their arms uncrossed for the first time. You have taught them that resilience is not just biological but procedural. This is unconventional. Unconventional's my middle name, Riley said, winking. Well, actually, it's Michael, but you get the idea. Zykari extended a hand, all 6 fingers spread in a rare gesture of respect. We will integrate your methods into our curriculum. You will lead a comparative resilience module. Riley shook their hand, careful not to wince at the grip. Just don't make me demonstrate by breaking my own arm. As the students filed out, Tavara lingered. Riley, your species. You treat pain like it's a suggestion. Yeah, he said, chuckling. And sometimes we tell it to shut up and deal. She nodded, her scales shimmering with something like admiration, and left. Riley sat on the mat, popping open a protein bar and staring at the fern. You're not fooling anyone, he muttered to the plant. I know you're synthetic. The Starweaver hummed around him, and for the first time in weeks, Riley felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, teaching aliens that humans might bend, but they sure as hell don't break.